Okay, hello everyone. Welcome again to my channel. Oh, no, this is not my channel, yeah. Welcome again to Dream Virtual Program, yeah. Before the event starts, like we are doing before, yeah. For the last week, I want to interview someone who are the lucky one to ask something about the topic for today. So before I begin to interviewing someone, participants, yeah. I would like to tell you who are the luckiest one to get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, presented by Office of International Affairs, Universitas Gadjah Mada. There are 8 persons here who are lucky to get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, from the onboarding program and day one program. Yeah. So I will announce now for the first one who are lucky to get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, from onboarding program or the first day, yeah. Congratulations to Mbak Janesa Kudera. Mbak Janesa, you are here or okay, maybe Mbak Janesa is still sleeping. Yeah, okay, thank you. Congratulations to Mbak Janesa. The last question is, hi ma'am, Sekar, how was the region able to keep the distinct culture alive despite being colonized by a foreign country? Congratulations, Mbak Janesa. And the second one, who are lucky to get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, congratulations to Fadrullah Hakim Yusuf. Mas Yusuf, are you here? Not yet? Okay. Mas Yusuf last week. Oh, you are here. Do you remember what are you asking about on the day one on board program?
Okay, I think I asked Professor Oba the questions regarding on how Indonesians are trying to overcome the pandemic situation. And I believe I asked two questions. I totally forgot another one. So sorry.
Your question is when in times of despair in Jogja. So how do you come together as one and help each other, yeah, on onboarding program? You know. Thank you very much, Mas Yusuf.
Alright, sure, no
Congratulations
problem.
for yeah, congratulations. You get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, yeah. And the third one, thank you. The third one, congratulations to Mbak Arum Maswangi. Are you here, Mbak Arum? I hope that this is not Mbak Arum from Office of International Affairs, yeah? Okay. Mbak Arum, for the question is about the various activities in DREaM program at offline, but if due to COVID-19, we do the virtual program online. So how we build the kind of interaction activities in this online system. Congratulations, Barum. And the fourth one, yeah, the person or the participants who are lucky is Mas Glenn Widodo, the chosen one to reposted by DREaM official account in Instagram. Congratulations, Mas Glenn. And for the day one with Professor Ova and also Dr. Tara, the first one who are lucky is Mbak Kristi Mai Sistona. Mbak Kristi, are you here, Mbak Kristi?
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. I'm here. Thank you so much for the merchandise in advance.
Okay, thank you. Do you remember about the question to Prof. Ova or Dr. Tara?
Yes, I remember I asked 3 questions. The first 2 questions was for the first speaker, and then Dr. Tara, and the other one is for the AI, the Genos. How is it going to be implemented, and if it is a homegrown invention in our country?
Yes. So you were here as a teacher.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you are a teacher, right?
I'm a senior high school public teacher in our country, sir. But prior to that, I teach in college for 5 years.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you
sir.
very much, Mbak Christy. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And the second one for the last one in day one, the best question is Mas Dani Saputra. Mas Dani, are you here today on room Zoom? Oh, not yet? Yeah. Mas Dani is asking about the implementation of the hub protocol and also how we accepting the vaccine of COVID-19, yeah. And once again, congratulations to Mas Dani. And the third one, who are lucky. The best question is this is the famous one. Yeah, this is the famous one who are lucky to get the merchandise, interesting official merchandise from DREaM. Mas Charles Alan Herpasio. Congratulations, Mas Charles. You are often mentioned by Prof. Ova and also Dr. Tara because the question is about tobacco and also about cigarettes. Yeah, are you here, Mas Charles? Mas Charles, are you here? Not yet? Okay. Yeah, Mas Charles is the famous one. Mas Charles is often mentioned by Professor Ova and also Dr. Tara because the question from Mas Charles is about the taxes of cigarette and also for the tobacco. And the luckiest one for the last in day one is Mas Dani Saputra. Wow, Mas Dani got to merchandise from DREaM official merchandise. Yeah, congratulations, Mas Dani Saputra. You are the luckiest one who get to merchandise in DREaM virtual program. You are now the chosen one, the repost from DREaM official account, yeah. Congratulations, Mas Reni. You get to official merchandise from DREaM, Office of International Affairs, Universitas Gajah Mada. Yeah, congratulations for all the winners. We have 8 winners who get the interesting merchandise from DREaM, from Office of International Affairs, Universitas Gajah Mada. Congratulations once again. And before our program starts, we reminds you all participants to please fill in the attendance list on Google Classroom, yeah. And we remind you also to type the questions on Zoom chat section. And the selected question will be choose to and invited to deliver live to the speakers. And selected question also will get DREaM souvenir, yeah, like I mentioned before, yeah. And we remind you again who have joined together in room Zoom meeting, please be able to mute the audio first. And if the connection or the device support, please turn on the video during this activity. Once again, for all participants who have joined together in room Zoom meeting, please, once again, we remind you to be able to mute the audio first, and if the device or the connection support, please turn on the video during this agenda. Thank you very much for your attention, and be happy to join this event. Yeah, once again, ladies and gentlemen, our agenda will begin soon. So before our program starts, we remind you all participants to fill in the attendance list on Google Room, Google Classroom, and we remind you again, once again, to type the question on Zoom chat section. The selected questions will be invited to deliver the question live to the speakers, and the selected questions also will get DREaM souvenir, yeah. And we remind you again who have joined the room Zoom meeting to please be able to mute the audio first, and if the device and the connection are support, please be able to start the video on to please turn on the video, yeah, during this agenda. Thank you very much and be happy to join this event. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon from Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen. We do hope you all are always in a good condition, yeah? First of all, we'd like to welcome the first, His Excellencies Mr. Umar Hadi, the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia in Seoul, Republic of Korea. Your Excellencies, Dr. Irwanda Lauri, as an Associate Professor, School of Engineering, University of Warwick, Vice Rector for Cooperation and Alumni, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Director for Partnership, Alumni, and International Affairs, Universitas Gadjah Mada, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you again to the 12th UGM DREaM International Virtual Short Program 2020, Resilience Amidst Global Pandemic, on today, November 27, 2020. And this is the second day of the DREaM Virtual Program. Due to a COVID-19 pandemic, DREaM 2020 conducted virtually while still adapting to the existing DREaM content that has been implemented for the last 11 years. And on today's meeting, we will have a special discussion with His Excellencies Mr. Umar Hadi as an ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia in Seoul, Republic of Korea, and also with Dr. Irwanda Lauri as an associate professor, School of Engineering, University of Warwick. But before that, to stimulate the discussion also, here we show you the video about the latest situation of the pandemic that has been occurred in Asia and Europe. Here is the following video.
In other news, daily coronavirus cases in Tokyo and South Korea have hit fresh highs, prompting new restrictions. It's all part of a wider resurgence of COVID-19 across many parts of Asia, and that includes Australia, where one state has begun a new lockdown.
Snaking queues have formed at supermarkets in South Australia as people scramble to buy essentials before a 6-day lockdown kicks in. It's being imposed to contain a sudden outbreak linked to an Adelaide hotel that was used to quarantine overseas travellers. At least 22 cases have been confirmed. From tonight, schools, factories and even takeaways will be shut, while funerals and weddings will be banned.
We need a circuit breaker. We need a circuit breaker to stay ahead of this. We need breathing space for a contact tracing blitz to protect the elderly, to protect the vulnerable, to protect our entire community. That is why today I'm asking you to rise to the challenge again.
South Korea is also tightening safe distancing rules yet again, barely a month after they were eased. More than 300 new cases have been confirmed, the highest daily increase since August. Public gatherings of more than 100 people are banned from tomorrow, while religious services and sporting events are capped at 30% capacity.
그러나 수도권과 강원권은 이제 지역사회 유행이 본격적으로 시작되는 위기 상황에 직면해 있습니다. 대규모의 확산을 막고 우리 모두의 안전을 위하여 불가피한 조치임을 이해해 주시기 바랍니다.
A similar story in Tokyo, where the daily caseload has hit a new high of nearly 500 new cases.
今日の広がりがですね、かなり世代的にも広がりがあるというのも今日のポイントなのかなというふうに考えております。感染者数のみならず、そういった広がりやその世代、地域などを見て、また専門家の意見を聞いていきたいと考えております。
Experts say a resurgence of the virus in Asia could hamper prospects for a broader reopening of borders. Even Taiwan, widely seen as having contained its outbreak successfully, is stepping up controls. It will now require all visitors to test negative for COVID-19 before arriving.
Daily coronavirus cases in Tokyo and South Korea have hit
the pandemic that has occurred in Asia and also in Europe. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, we will have a discussion with Mr. Ambassador and Dr. Irwanda Lauri. The discussion will be led by a moderator up to next 1 hour and 30 minutes. And before the discussion begin, let me to introduce our moderator for today's meeting. Yeah. Our moderator today is Professor Paripurna Sugarda. He earned his master's degree on international and comparative private law in University of Groningen, Netherlands, and earned his doctoral degree in legal science in Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. In 2012 until 2014, he was appointed to be the Dean Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And after 2 years serving as a Dean, the rector at the time trusted him to be Vice Rector for Cooperation and Alumni, Universitas Gadjah Mada for 3 years, from 2014 until 2017. And start from 2017, he was officially inaugurated again as the Vice Rector for Cooperation and Alumni, Universitas Gadjah Mada, until 2022 or 5 years. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator for today, Professor Paripurna Sugarda. Time is yours.
Thank you so much, Mas Adi. His Excellency Bapak Umar Hadi, and also Professor Irwanda Lauri from School of Engineering, University of Warwick, and all of the participants, also the Director of Cooperation and International Affairs, and also the Deputy Director for International Affairs, and of course all of the participants. It's really great to see you all through online. We have around 80 participants in these discussions, and from many countries, of course. And we will have a very interesting discussion for today with the main topic of resilience amidst global pandemic. And we have two distinguished speakers. One is mentioned by MC, His Excellency Mr. Umar Hadi, Ambassadors of the Republic of Indonesia in Seoul, Republic of Korea, and the second speaker will be Associate Professor Dr. Irwanda Lauri, Associate Professor, School of Engineering, University of Warwick. Before I start the discussion, allow me to read the CV of those two distinguished speakers, starting from His Excellency Bapak Umar Hadi. He is the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the Republic of Korea. His Excellency is a career diplomat with 26 years of service. Before he was assigned as Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the Republic of Korea on 2017, he served Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia in Los Angeles from 2014 to 2017. Prior to that, he served Director for Western Europe Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 2012 to 2014. Directorate Public Diplomacy 2005 to 2009, Deputy Director at the Office of Foreign Minister 2001 to 2005, and officer at an ad hoc officer for the chairmanship of Indonesia in Non-Aligned Movement from 1992 to 1995. His overseas posts include Minister Plenipotentiary and Deputy Chief of Mission at the Indonesian Embassy in The Hague, the Netherlands, 2009 to 2012, and Second Secretary at the Indonesian Permanent Mission to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva, Switzerland, 1999 to 2001. He has also been involved in numerous negotiations and international conferences. Bapak Umar Hadi sits at the Board of Advisors of the Institute of Peace and Democracy, the implementing agency of Bali Democracy Forum since its inception in 2008. He's also organized series of meetings of Global Intermediate Dialogue and Indonesia-Norway Joint Initiative to promote intercultural understanding. He initiated groundbreaking collaborative projects between the Foreign Ministry and civil society organizations, among others, in establishing the International Conference of Islamic Scholars and the Asia-Pacific Regional Dialogue for Interfaith Cooperation. He studied at the Fletcher School of Law, oh, he's a lawyer too, and diplomacy at Medford, USA, the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies, Geneva, Switzerland, and the Pajajaran University, Bandung, Indonesia. Wow. So we are so lucky to meet him, to hear his discussion topic for today about coping with the pandemic in socioeconomic sectors, Korea's best practice. And then we come to the second speaker, which is also amazing. Associate Professor Dr. Irwanda Lauri from School of Engineering, University of Warwick. Mr. Irwanda Lauri graduated from Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia, with BSc in Civil Engineering and then went to Bauhaus Universität Weimar, Germany, where he undertook a master program there in natural hazard and mitigation in structural engineering, and obtained his MSc in civil engineering. This was followed by his PhD at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lausanne, or EPFL, Switzerland. His doctoral study focused on methodologies for data interpretation during continuous monitoring of structures. He is a member of several professional associations, such as International Society for Structural Health Monitoring of Intelligent Infrastructure, or ISHMII, and then the European Group for Intelligence Computing in Engineering, or EG, ICE, and American Society of Civil Engineering, or ASCE. So Dr. Irwanda Lowry is a young associate professor originated from Indonesia. And we are so proud of him because he is now become the associate professor from high-level university, Warwick University. So we will have around 20-minute presentation from the first speaker, His Excellency Mr. Umar Hadi, and then another 20 minutes from the second speaker, and then we will come into the Q&A terms around 40 minutes. And please, during the discussion, during the presentation, you may just mention some questions through chat on Zoom, and then I will see and give you a chance to ask the question directly to those two speakers. So without further ado, let us just give a time to His Excellency Mr. Umar Hadi to present his presentation. Mr. Umar Hadi, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Paripurna. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I would like to greet everybody that has joined this session. But before I start, because you read out my CV, Professor, actually, if you Google my name now, then you will see my picture, my name, and below that you will see film producer.
Oh, amazing.
Because it's Google, it must be correct. But then, well, my message to our younger friends in the room is that actually the age of having a single profession in life, or even having one life, is already over. You are going into this age where you have to reinvent yourself almost every year, almost every time, because the speed of the advance of technology, especially on information technology, is so fast that we have to keep reinventing ourselves. But this is a very interesting challenge, and I'm sure that our younger generation, they are much more capable than our generation. With that, I think if we look at South Korea today, we have to remember that this is an economic miracle, right? South Korea today is the largest producer of semiconductor, right? South Korea also is the largest producer of lithium battery. Right? So all kinds of future industries, this country has been mastering it and dominating the global market. Now, when early this year in January, when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in China, actually the South Korean government already anticipated that the pandemic will come to South Korea. Why? Because first, geographical proximity. The distance between South Korea and the Hubei province or Wuhan city is not that far away. I think it's less than 2-hour flight. And number two, in the Wuhan area, apparently there are so many Korean companies and factories, and therefore also Korean workers or expatriates. And then the number of tourists from China to Korea has been the largest number. So that's why South Korea is one of the first countries outside China that experienced an outbreak of this COVID-19. I still remember that when in February this year, in Korea, we are already very busy trying to protect Indonesian citizens in Korea from COVID-19. In Indonesia, in Jakarta, the situation was still very calm, right? While in Korea, it's already we have to do so many things to try to educate our people to be safe from the virus. But then, can we share this? But then, now it's been almost a year, right? It's been more than 10 months. Can you see the screen? Okay.
Yes, you can see the screen.
So today we are in the third wave, right? And this third wave apparently is more difficult than the first or the second wave. The first wave was difficult because it was new, but the South Korean government was able to take care of the first wave. But then the second wave came in August during the summer because of the holidays. And then also situation got better. But then now in November, we are entering a third wave, which is far more difficult, I think, because on the first wave, there was only one center of outbreak that was in the city of Daegu, 200 kilometers away from Seoul. The second wave, we already had several, but not too many centers of outbreak. But now, apparently, the health authority in Korea, they don't even know how many clusters of the outbreak. So the spread of the virus is getting faster, and apparently now it goes up to smaller town and village area, rural areas. However, I think when I look at all countries in the world of how they manage this pandemic, South Korea, I think, is one of the best countries. Uh, and, and then they also, the government of South Korea also can manage the pandemic and at the same time managing the economic impact in a good way. And also this country keep upholding the principles and values of democracy. I see three factors that can explain how this country can manage this pandemic better, relatively better than the other countries in the world. The first one is on preparedness. I can see very clearly that for all kinds of things in managing the pandemic, the Korean authority has a relatively high level of preparedness. The policies, they have already the regulations are already in place. The medical system, hospitals, and everything are prepared to deal with this kind of situations because they had previous experience with SARS and everything. And then the mask rationing system was already in place because wearing face mask in Korea is not something new. This is not because of the COVID. Before this pandemic, wearing masks was from time to time also mandated. For example, when we had what we call the yellow dust and other environmental issues. And then also, they even already have a line for what they call Corona Blues counseling. The second factor is policy coherence. You can see in South Korea how different branches of government, they have one voice, they have one policy, and the policies are always based on scientific finding. There is an organization called Korea Center for Disease Control and Prevention. This is the government agency that is really in the heart of their efforts in managing the pandemic. So all policies must be consulted first to this Korea KCDA, Korea Center for Disease Prevention and Control Agency. And then the third factor is public trust. I think the Koreans, they have managed to strike this delicate balance where you can share the responsibility. So everyone seems to me feel very responsible. The owner of a store, for example, he wouldn't let anybody come into his store if he or she doesn't wear a mask. So the sense of responsibility is very high. The owner of a small factory somewhere in Daegu, for example, he or she would be very protective of his employees. And he would provide all kinds of the necessary things during this pandemic to his employees. So those three factors, I think, contribute to the fact that South Korea has been able to manage this pandemic relatively better than other countries. Next slide. But of course, the economic impact is very hard. Please remember that the South Korean economy is very dependent on international trade. So when the world closed down because of the coronavirus, many factories in South Korea, they cannot produce their products because the market, the export market suddenly closed down. So daily life was disrupted. Small businesses especially are suffering. A number of tourists, now with the popularity of K-pop and K-drama, South Korea has become one of the hottest tourist destination, including from Indonesia. But since February, March, practically no more international tourists. And then also cancellations of events. In normal days, we have almost everyday exhibitions, expo, international conference, this and that. But then since March, everything had to be cancelled. Next slide. So you can see how the Korean economy was hit very hard by this pandemic. The GDP growth rate plunged, private consumption, retail sales, and also, continue. The unemployment is rising. Especially worrying is the unemployment among the youth, among young generation. Next. So this is the 5 levels of social distancing that is now being applied by the government to try controlling the spread of the virus. Now most of the country is at level 2. Especially in Seoul and the surrounding area. This is how they define level 2. For example, gatherings cannot be organized for more than 100 people. And many services have to be closed down or limited. Next. Then a few of the policies is face mask is mandatory. I remember even in March and April, in other countries, wearing or not wearing mask was still in debate, but in Korea it was very consistent since the first time mask is always mandatory. Even if you try to catch a bus or taxi and you're not wearing your face mask, the bus would not let you get in. And then QR code and temperature check in all places. You go to a restaurant, you have to first register yourself by your headphone with the QR code to the restaurant's equipment, and then you get a temperature check, and then all cafe. This is especially Seoul is the city of cafe, city of millions cafe, a lot of cafe. But now after 9 p.m., you can only take out. You cannot drink your coffee inside the cafe.
Excuse me, Your Excellency, your time is 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
Next. So this is the budget. The government is already adding about 67 trillion won for managing the pandemic. But then Korea has also set up a kind of a 5 year plan. They call it for recovery. They call it Korean New Deal. Korean New Deal. This is with a budget of 130 billion US dollars, basically to move forward with the digital economy and green economy. So I think the idea is this country will have to not only survive, but also move forward with reform. So the economy will be geared toward more digital economy and green economy. So I think that is my presentation, Professor. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. Here is we just see the very interesting presentation from His Excellency Mr. Umar Hadi. Experience happening in Korea until recently, but it is why it is interesting because it is good for us to compare the way we combat the pandemic and the way the Korean deal with this pandemic. Korean have three principles in combating the pandemics. The first is preparedness, policy coherence, and public trust. Where for Indonesian case, public trust is very interesting because we are not dealing with how to make public trust to the government, but how to make public trust to the virus itself, because some people doesn't believe that COVID is really dangerous for our life. And then after all countries got the problem with their combating the pandemic, at the same time they have to maintain the economic growth, in which all countries got the minus economic growth, and then now it is a kind of competition who will win the competition in order to accelerate the economic growth. And it seems that Korea again will be one of the leaders. So thank you so much, His Excellency, and please give applause to this very interesting presentation. So let's go further into our second speakers, Associate Professor Irwanda Lowry. He will present about the coping with the pandemic and socio-economic sector, University of Warwick's experience in conformity with the government's policy. So, Associate Professor Irwanda Lowry, time is yours. You got 20 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Paripurna. Also, I would like to thank the organizer, UGM. I mean, it's a great pleasure to be here, and also it's very wonderful to see all the participants coming from all over the world. Although I have to say it's very unfortunate that we can't see us in person, because I'm imagining if this would have happened in not in the pandemic situation, it will be a very great again event. Okay, so when I first contacted by the organizer for this talk today, I was very excited for many different reasons. Okay, but one of the biggest reasons is that I would like, I'm happy and I'm very much to learn about to have the chance actually to learn about how, because I'm aware that all the participants are actually coming from all different universities in the world. So it will be interesting as well to hear how your respective universities actually cope and deal with this pandemic situation. So today, although it says a lecture, a talk, for me, it's just a sharing. I would like to share what we work university trying to do, actually our best to, we always say this, there are two things that we would like to do in this pandemic situation. One is actually, of course, we would like to provide the best learning experience to our students. And secondly, and also not less important than the first one, is that we would like to keep and secure jobs of our colleagues as well here at Warwick. Okay, so please allow me to now share my screen. So hopefully, I hope it's visible.
Yep.
Yeah, okay,
Your
Professor.
screen is visible.
Okay, so I will in the slideshow format. Bear with me for a second. So yes, Warwick's experience in conformity with the government's policy. I think before I start, again, since I was hoping that this going to be a two-way discussion, so it's not going to be a long presentation. I'll just be sharing our experience, and hopefully later on in the Q&A session, I'll be hearing more from your side about your experience, okay? And we can discuss about it. So before I start, I would like to take the chance to shortly introduce the Warwick University. It's a relatively young university. It was established in 1965, and it's located right in the center of the UK. It's only an hour from London and also 20 minutes from Birmingham. So it's a good place to study, focus into your studying during the weekdays, and then perhaps go to have some fun in the weekends to London or to somewhere else because it's right in the middle. So for everyone, if you're considering postgraduate studies, you might want to think about Warwick. Okay, so before we talk further about COVID, I think it's good to see a bit of data for UK, and I like to put a comparison here, Indonesia. As you can see on the screen or on your screen, the first in United Kingdom, um, hold on. Okay, the pointer is not working. So on the left-hand side, you see that the number of total cases in Indonesia is actually 1.5 million, while in Indonesia you only have 500, around 500,000. So the cases that we have here at UK, in the UK is 3 times than that in Indonesia. And also, you can see that the number of death itself is 56,000, while in Indonesia it's only 16,000. And if you notice, it's even less in South Korea. So, and also in the UK, below on the left, you see the number of cases over time. At the moment, we have our second peak. And please note that the axis, oh, again, what's happening? Apologies for that. So here, the maximum is 40,000, while Indonesia, it's 6,000. So if we look at this, we might see that actually in the UK, the cases for COVID is, I would say, much, much more severe in Indonesia. And the second peak, it's slightly related to winter and also possibility due to the release of the first lockdown. And now we're entering the second lockdown, the 4 weeks lockdown, until the 2nd of December, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? So that's the whole situation with COVID-19 with regards to numbers. And I think in the last couple of days, we have in daily basis around 18,000 to 20,000 new cases every day. While again, Indonesia, it's only the rate of 4,000. So what about, that's the whole UK for the whole country. What about the universities or in higher education? So in higher education, so far up till now, we have around 50,000 positive cases reported by the institutions. And as you can see in the figure on the left-hand side, as highlighted, Warwick universities, up to now, there are 500 cases reported by the institution, okay? And on the right-hand side, you see the figures for percentage of cases by institution populations. And at the top, you see the ones that have the most. You can tell it's Bristol, Durham, Newcastle, etc. Now, with regards to the managing the operational, I mean, from the government itself, or in this case, in particular, Department of Education, the department has published actually a guidance. The source, I put it below, www.gov.uk, the guidance to actually reopening buildings and campuses. So it's how, from the how to minimize the risk assessment about the cleaning, ventilation, social distancing, and etc. But the main, not one of the main thing that is actually published also in these guidelines is actually this tier system that they adopted in the UK, here in the UK. So from tier one, the default position, until the worst case scenario, tier four, or they call it last resort. And if you notice, I will not read the text one by line, but I will highlight this. There is face-to-face element, okay, in tier one, tier two, and tier three. So despite the pandemic situation, I think the government value very much the face-to-face interaction with our students. So only when we have the worst case scenario, then everything or the majority of population is encouraged to be online. So that's the guidelines from the government. So how Warwick adopt and applies these guidelines. So what we do, again, I want to highlight this tier one until tier four. What we have at the moment, we are currently at tier one. So what we have is a blended learning combining on-campus and online teaching. While at the worst case scenario, as you see here below, all provisions are delivered online for the teaching as well as the assessment or the exams, as you might have said. So what is blended learning? Blended learning is again combining on campus and online teaching. Why it's blended? It's because for some major or some subjects like engineering, arts, medical, it is quite difficult for us to actually deliver because it's very important for the students to have this in-hand kind of or on-hand kind of experience that they can have when they're having this learning on campus, for example, for the labs, for the drama, for the medical students, etc. So that's why we have this blended approach. And I think something that differs a little bit from what I heard from colleagues and friends in Indonesia is that when we mention online teaching here at Warwick, online teaching does not necessarily mean live lectures. Like, for example, what I'm doing now, it's live. I'm talking to everyone online. But for us, online teaching, it's divided into two. It can be asynchronous or synchronous. This live interaction is asynchronous, but what we or most of us tend to do, or what we've decided to do at Warwick, is actually to do this asynchronous type of teaching in terms of delivery, which is actually involves um, pre-recorded lectures, quizzes, and etc. So it's mainly pre-recorded, and the interaction is through forums. Um, we use Moodle as platform and all other things, or even through social media like WhatsApp as well, but not the lecture itself. Okay, so that's what we do in terms of teaching delivery. And again, I'm very curious to hear and to find out what you have or what you have applied in your respective universities. Okay, and we can discuss about this later on. So in general, there are plenty of guidance or guidelines provided by the university to our students as well as staff. But another important thing is actually not just about the teaching or standard procedure like self-isolation, testing, and safety on campus. We also pay a lot of attention in the well-being of our students and staff, because this is a very important um, thing as well in our socioeconomic life or in our daily life. So, for example, of general guidelines in safety on campus, we firstly we have the safety assured spaces. Everything has been inspected and evaluated for risk and safety for each and every spaces in our campus. So and also social distancing. Um, there are spaces where, of course, in general, we have at the minimum 2 meter distance between each other. We try our best as well to manage to have fewer people on campuses. For example, now lecturers and staff, we are very much encouraged to work from home. And again, since most or if not all lectures are pre-recorded, so the students can also learn at home at their own time and convenience. And with regards to face coverings, the university actually provided students and staff reusable face coverings, thermometers as well. It's provided for students and staff, and also for all lecture theaters, classes, labs. We have infrared thermometer that we would use to ensure that anyone who's participating in any teaching or research activities on campus does not have symptoms related to COVID or does not have high temperature or fever. Yeah, that's one example. And also, there are facilities to test and trace service on campus. We can find hand sanitizer everywhere, any corner in campus. More cleaning conducted by our colleagues in the cleaning departments. And also, we see more and more increased signage on campus as well. But lastly, this is not just by campus, but this is everyone's. We need to do our own bit to protect us as a community. This is the main message we try to convey to our students as well as staff. Yeah. So that will be it from me. Thank you very much again, Professor Paripurna. I'll be happy and gladly to discuss about more things with all the other participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Laurie. It was wonderful to hear your experience in Warwick University combating the pandemic. Because one interesting thing is that campus is the place when people get together and learning and doing at the same time. So very suddenly that we got to stop our behavior, our culture, and to have to create a new, so-called a new culture that have to be followed by all participants in campus. And this is campus, right? Campus is like a country actually, because it is a community with so-called intellectual community, and almost everyone have their own, opinions, and sometimes it's not quite easy to control them. But the way that Warwick University combating this pandemic is very interesting, and it seems like work. And for example, uh, uh, doing the blended approach is very interesting. Also happened in our campus, University of Gajah Mada, Yogyakarta, Indonesia. that lecturer can just make a choice between doing the online lectures and also the offline lectures. But the offline is very limited with regard to the number of the students and then the disciplines of the protocol of the health protocol, so called, so that if faculty are not ready with that, so we will not allowed to combat to conduct the offline classes. One a very challenging thing is that for laboratory, so when they got to study in the laboratory, they have to come and to see their experiments. So in this way, we still have to find a way to dealing with that. And then, yeah, it is also interesting to have the principle that everyone's doing their bit to protect our community and do not be the exception. So this one is very good and reflecting the so-called awareness of not for them itself, but for the community. So this one is I guess, a very important value that have to be developed, especially in our country, Indonesia. Yeah, so again, thank you so much. And guys, would you mind give a big applause to the presentation of Professor Laurie. Thank you. So now it is time to get the Q&A session. And let me start off seeing the chat. And I would like to use the principle of the first come, first serve. Let me start from, Iana. Iana asking a certain question to His Excellency. Iana, please.
Yeah, hello, hi, selamat siang. Annyeonghaseyo. I'm willing to do this. I really want to do this. Okay, basically, Mr. Ambassador, aka Mr. Producer, yeah. From your point of view, how is COVID-19 reshaping our work? Yeah, because we are working in a new norm, from face to face to the online, and also so many things we can see affected our socio-economic because of the COVID. So how this COVID potentially reshape our world? Maybe forever, from your point of view. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, please.
Thank you, Liana. There is a good book by Homer. I forgot the first name, but the title of the book is The Upside of Down. It's an old book, I think in 1998 or 1999. The Upside of Down. Basically, the author argues that in human history, every time there is a big calamity, human tends to not only survive, striving for survival, but also for propulsion, for progress. So, and in that book, he described how in the past, different calamity, the pandemic in the Spanish flu, and then the World War. After each those events, global events, then suddenly you have new technology, you have better ways of living, and so on and so forth. So I tend to believe that this time also, I think the humankind will not only survive, but we will transform ourselves to better ways of living. And actually, this pandemic is only this provides a kind of acceleration. So whatever trend already happening, for example, on digital technology, right? The trend was already there. Your e-commerce, your this and that. But then because of the pandemic, suddenly you have to accelerate everything. On campus, I was very impressed by the presentation of Mr. Irwanda Lori about how the campus, the university was very responsible in making sure that everyone is safe. But then we know that online teaching was already a trend. Distance learning is not something new, but this pandemic pushed us to accelerate the technology, the method, the way you provide that service. Even in the embassy of Indonesia in Seoul here, our embassy is very big. This is a one compound. We have the office here, my residence is here, and also the apartment for the staff. About 100 people live in this compound. So we have to make sure that this compound is safe. So we have to make all the necessary arrangements the temperature check. Guests cannot come willy-nilly. They have to have appointments. And then in normal day, our service counter has more than 100 people come in for your visa, your legalization, many businesses. So now we have to transform all the services into online. So now you don't need to come to the embassy to get your visa or your passport. Everything can be done online. So I think that will happen, and I think at the end, as I said, humans, we will not only adapt. I think adaptation is good, but transformation is better. We will transform ourselves into a better place. Thank you.
Prof, I think you off your mic.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Professor Lori, would you mind to add with regard to this question, please?
Oh, yeah, before that, I also have question kind of nearly the same with earlier question. What point of view from Dr. Irwanda regarding on education system, meaning that this hybrid way, I am from Malaysia, so some parts say we are doing online and then some parts we are doing face-to-face class. And basically what I can see currently is online phase. You know what, how we want to make the quality of the study is in a grade, because I know of course student will find when we give them assignment, of course they will try to check their online, find answer via online, something like that. So I can see the quality of the study will be degrade. And how do you think this hybrid way of working may impact our may be impact especially on students on how they communicate? That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lori.
Okay, thank you, Professor Paripurna. I'll try to make it short as much as possible. So, I think first, how it will reshape the world. It will, for sure. It will never be the same again. That's one thing, for good and for worse. But I would like to emphasize on the positive side, okay? So I would like to talk about the positive one. So the positive one in academia, especially, I would say it's access into information, which is supported by all these, as mentioned by Professor Paripurna and the High Excellencies, that it has been happening for quite some years, actually, for some decades, this online learning. It's just that now it's the momentum that everyone's realized that, okay, it is actually possible. And MIT, actually, the MIT itself has started quite some time ago by having these free online videos. And I myself, until now, if you ask me how I learn, I'm not learning from books. If you come to my office, you will not find any books. I prefer YouTube than books. I do enjoy courses from colleagues from IIT, for example, IIT India or Indonesia, even from UGM or ITB. Why? Because you might not realize, but it's a huge, big privilege to be a student, to be able to sit down and have someone else explaining to you. That's I think for me it's a big privilege rather than reading a books. I'm not a book person. But again, it will change the world. And especially I think again, another positive, the young generations, you are all like a sponge, I would say, compared to us. I'm not that old, but even for myself, compared to my students, I can feel the gap already. The ability of the younger generation now to absorb information, etc., it's actually much higher than us or even to my generation. But there's a big but. What's the difference? The older generation, myself and older, we have slightly more grit than the younger ones. We are more patient. We take the time. We don't always, sometimes we do, but we don't always try to find the best, shortest, quickest solution. We are patient enough to do that. So that's what I'm trying to say. Don't be like us because we mostly resistant to changes. But at the same time, you can also take a bit of good side of ours. We are not all bad. You can you can see how the older generation, how they are taking their time patient in learning everything. I think that's the way forward actually to combine all the positive things. And with regards to synchronous and asynchronous, again, as everything in life, there's always positive and negative, good and bad. Um, a synchronous approach, or for example, pre-recorded lectures, will never be able to replace face-to-face, in-person contact that we all have. We are a social being as human. Social interaction is crucial in our lives. I mean, I'm very much affected now. I can't see people, I can't talk people. We stick stuck at home. It's very different. I think everyone experience more or less the same thing. So I think, of course, it will never be the same. But again, I'm not saying I'm an optimistic person, but I am trying my best to be one. So I think there is always plus in this pre-recorded learning, for example, lectures or asynchronous approach is that after 12 years of teaching, I realized that everyone is not the same, everyone is unique. All students are unique, is unique by themselves as well. Everyone has their own preference in terms of learning. I prefer YouTube, I don't like books. Someone else might prefer books over YouTube's or video. Some students likes to have real life interaction in the classes, like being asked questions, being asked to go in front and explain. Some students don't like to be on the spot, don't like to be in the spotlight, they don't like to be asked. They tend to sit back like myself. I'm much more convenient to learn at my own time and space, so everything can be different. The good thing about the future, what I will see coming is that our students will have more options, okay, which hopefully to be tailored to their needs and preference. That will be it from me, Professor Paripurna. Hopefully it answers some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Lowry. So we come to three people who are asking some questions from Muhammad Baf, and then Usman and Sol. Starting from Muhammad Baf, please. Time is yours. Please make it shortly. Please unmute your microphone, please. Yeah.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Hello, Mohammed.
Yeah, my question is about due to the pandemic, because we realize that in the economic sectors are affected around the globe. So in South Korea, due to the closing down of companies in South Korea, what is the plans of the governments of the day in South Korea to help these companies to gain their economic standards back so that they can start operating and keep the lives of their workers? Because I realize that when companies are closed, there are many people who are going to lose their jobs. So what is the plan of the government in South Korea to make sure that these companies regain their economic system so that they can keep their employees in their system?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Usman?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for your chance. So I would like to ask question to Prof. Who's the first? I'm sorry.
The first is His
Umar Hadi.
Excellency, Mr. Usman Hadi, and the
Yeah.
second is Professor Laurie.
Yeah, I think I would like to ask to Prof. Umar Hadi about the three key success to prevent the COVID-19 cases. It's about the third one about public trust. How to build public trust in order to prevent or decrease the number of COVID-19 cases, and then how the government of South Korea create the public trust so they are success to decrease the COVID-19 cases itself. I think that's it. And I would like to ask the second professor for the opinion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Miss Sol, time is yours.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Ambassador Dr. Umar Hadi. You were talking about the economy that Korea needs to rebuild its economy again and the money that is going to be invested. And in your last PowerPoint, you were talking about Korean New Deal starting in 2020 until 2025, talking about the digital technology and green technology. So I think we can understand and guess a little bit of the digital technology, but can you explain a little bit more about the green technology? Got me curious. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Umar. Please, starting from the question of Muhammad Bak and then Usman and Sol. Time is yours.
Thank you. Muhammad Bak. Most of the companies in Korea, they have reopened. They closed down or shortened their working hours only for, I think, 1 or 2 weeks, because the government was very successful in anticipating the economic impact of the pandemic. This is, as I explained, about policy coherence. So basically, it was only in the month of April, because suddenly the world closed down. Korea cannot export their products, so factory has to just fill in inventory, prepare. But then there was one policy that was very interesting. This is cash transfer. So the government transfer in cash to almost 22 million households. Remember, Korea is only 50 million people, so 21.7 million households. So all households got money from the government. Different numbers. If you have only one person in your household, you get so and so dollars. If you have 4%, you get some dollar more. Right? So these cash transfers, these households can spend the money in the traditional market or in cooperatives. And that money, and the number is, the money is, berapa dolar nih? So it's 14.2 billion US dollars goes directly to the market. It's all household. So even the household of the president got the money, up to the most vulnerable family, right? So they have to spend the money. And therefore, these factories that at first had to close down because of the new demand from the market, because of this fresh money from the government, they can start producing again. So that effect worked very well in the Korean economy. So now Korean economy has basically been recovered, and it's a V shape. And remember, not all sectors in the economy suffer. There are sectors even got more profits. For example, the K-drama, the Korean drama, TV drama, they have now wider audience. Even someone in Europe or in the United States, they now watch Korean drama on Netflix, right? So that sector got now got better. Or games. Korea is one of the largest producer of video games, right? Because of the lockdown everywhere in the world, so these companies producing video games, they have, and also companies producing medical equipments, right? The face masks, the ventilators, now for the vaccine, they are having great days. So that's basically government policy is very anticipating. So before the worst impact took place, there were already some anticipation. So this is what is good in Korea. I know not every country is doing that. There are so many countries that is behind the curve, not ahead of the curve, right? But South Korea is good. Now, Pak Jusman, public trust. This is a big question. I think this is a $1 million question. If I know the answer, I would be very rich now. But when in South Korea, there are a few things. Number one is the two factors before public trust. You have to have preparedness and policy coherence first. Then you can build public trust. Without policy coherence and preparedness, you can never have public trust. Okay. Number two, and very important, I have to underline, the policy, all policies, not only policy about the COVID, but all policies, economic policy, this and that, all must be data-driven, scientifically based policy. This is very important. That can build up public trust. Number two, information transparency. Since the first day, I remember very well, this government has been very, very transparent. Every day, twice a day, the KCDA, the main agency, has two public conference. So it's broadcast live to explain, to announce the policy, the situation. So everything is very transparent. We can have all the data. Number three, empowering the community. So the community is very active in the campuses, in all universities. The community is very active, and also absorbing all this digital technology, the new technology, all kinds of applications, websites, and this from community-based. They are bringing up and embraced by the government. so that the people, the community feel they have some contribution to the efforts to manage the pandemic. I think that is what I know from what I see in South Korea. The third one, Seoul. Is that your name, Seoul? Okay. Yeah. On the economy, yeah, actually, if we can get no slide, it's okay. The Korean New Deal on the Green New Deal, the budget is 73.4 trillion Korean won. What is in US dollars? 73.4 maybe billion US dollars. I am bad at numbers. But the focus is three. One, transitioning all cities and rural areas infrastructure into environmentally friendly infrastructure. So Korea has been very big in the smart city concept. So they are using technology in ensuring that the infrastructures in the cities and rural areas to become environmentally friendly. For example, on electricity, now they are using more mini grids and electricity storage system with the resources would be renewable energy. So they are changing the energy composition. They are closing down all the coal-fired power plants, changing them with gas-fired, and also renewables like wind farms and solar system. So environmentally friendly infrastructure. Number two is low carbon energy, as I explained. So they are changing the energy composition, which is not good news for Indonesia because Indonesia is the second largest coal supplier to Korea. Number one is Australia. But we are working on that. We will replace it with lithium battery. Number three is developing the ecosystem for innovation for the environmentally friendly industry. So as I said, Korea is already the largest producer of lithium battery, right? And lithium battery is very important for future industries like electric vehicles. Even your handphone is using lithium battery. And then if we want to have a workable and efficient renewable energy like wind or solar, you need electricity storage system and microgrids, smart grids, and this all will need battery. And another industry that is very interesting here is the smart farming. The farming technology. I just visited one of the factories that create basically a system that it's a combination of all kinds of new technology in farming like hydroponic and all this, but the whole system is very compact. Basically, you can grow anything, and it's used like a carousel. It's going around. So instead of the plants doesn't stay because the traditional way the plant goes on the land and the farmer going around, right? But the system, the plants are going around, the farmer can just sit down and do the things with the computer, with AI and everything. So again, actually the New Deal is actually the combination between digital and green. And this is what will make Korea not only survive from this pandemic, the economy, but will transform itself to the next level. Because right now it's a very heavy manufacturing country, and then services sector is growing. So the next frontier is the digital and biotechnology and green technology. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me invite again 3 people asking questions to both, to His Excellency Umar Hadi and Professor Lowry. Let me invite Mr. Harith, and then Ms. Katrina, Shaina, and Ms. Hanifa. Mr. Harith, time is yours.
Hello. Okay, I would like to ask. Okay, previously, Ms. Liana has talked about how the quality of education, I mean, online learning, seems to be a bit degraded quality because everything has to be done online, and we miss out on a lot of hands-on, like especially for technical fields. And when we look into the future, how do you think the employers will have? Do you think the employers will have a negative image on COVID-19 graduates? I would say, like those who are studying in this pandemic period, like they would have less experience on hands-on things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. Very interesting. And Ms. Katrina, Shaina, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is first for Dr. Umar. Given this hard situation and large impact of COVID-19 to all the economy of each country in the globe, and unlike South Korea, there are a lot of struggling third world countries just like us, Philippines. Therefore, I would like to know what would be the best first action a third world country should take in recovering again. And for Dr. Okay.
Yes, please.
And for Dr. Irwanda, here in our country, Philippines, we have synchronous and asynchronous classes. But aside from that, the Department of Education and some public universities provided printed modules for students who can't afford to attend online activities. With this setup, how will it affect the students' learning in the long run? That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Hanifa?
Assalamualaikum, good afternoon. I was actually asking the intervention or if there's any government intervention or program that is provided with those socially impacted or socioeconomically impacted, and especially those in small businesses. But I guess the question is already addressed from the recent answer by Dr. Omar. So thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you. His Excellency, Dr. Umar, please, time is yours.
Thank you. For Harith, I would suggest a very good book, relatively new, by Professor Yuval Noah Harari. It's called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Well, I know the book was written before the pandemic, but I think the trend was already there. Basically, he argues that as I said at the first, the days of, you get your first 20 years of your life to learn, to study, and the next 30 years to work based on what you learn in school. So Professor Harari argued that day is over uh, because of the speed of the technology to the future. You have to basically learn everything new every time. I also read somewhere, for example, now in companies, especially the digital companies in the United States, like Google or Microsoft, they actually don't really ask for your competence, your qualifications when you apply. They just have a set of skills that as an employee of that company, you have to possess. For example, Python language, this and that, a set of skills. I think in Google, 10 skills needed. Now, if you join the company, but you don't have 2 skills out of 10, you have 8 skills, but 2 skills you don't have, the company will provide you with the training to equip yourself with the new skills. So basically, it's called skills. And by the way, I know that today my younger brothers or younger friends, they don't really want to work in a company for life anyway. Uh, this is what we call now the gig economy, right? You have certain skills and you expose that skills, you make use of that skill to make money. And then next year you learn new skills and then you use that skill to get money. So I tend to think that is the future. People like me who are very fortunate to have 26 years of employment with the government, I think will become more difficult. It's going to be more and more difficult to have that kind of luxury. So you have to prepare. That's why now learning is a lifetime thing. You should not stop learning just because you graduated from university. And I think personally, I have proven that you will never be too old to learn something new. I learned filmmaking in Los Angeles in 2014, and that I can produce a film. Now they Google call me a film producer. You see, there's no such thing as too late to learn. So I think that's my answer. For Katrina, wow, this is a very difficult question. What to do to recover, especially in a less developed country? Again, I would be very, very wealthy if I know the answer. But let me tell you this. Let's say your country doesn't have the preparedness and there is no policy coherence and there is no public trust. So you are going down to this very, very difficult situation, and the situation is out of control. What to do? You know, I always believe in what I call community resilience. Sometimes it is back to the community to provide some sense of initiative and guidance where there is an absence from the side of the government. I happen to be an activist since I was very young in one of the largest Muslim organizations in Indonesia. And I'm very proud of the history of this organization because in the past, even under the colonial rule, when the colonial government at the time did not provide education, for example, for common people, the organization already provided education. So this is where community initiative, community ideas and efforts can not replace, but fill in the void, fill in the gap. And I have seen this in many places in the world today during this pandemic, not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries, where at the end, the community are the main driver for changes. And when that happens, the government will have no other choice but to follow. Now, specifically in technical language about economic recovery, I'm not an economist, but I think this is the time when government intervention is very critical. How do you, because someone said, I think it was Muhammad Bah said, when factories close down, are closing down, people are unemployed, it's very difficult. Or if you see for example, in the island of Bali, the island of Bali, 3.5 million people, most of the populations, their livelihood is dependent on tourism. Suddenly, no tourists, right? People are unemployed. So government intervention is very important to really first provide a safety net. So cash transfers is very important to the households, to the people directly, so that they can still buy food and all the necessary goods. But then number two, there must be intervention to save the small and micro, small and medium companies. For example, in Bali, the big hotels, the five-star hotels, you don't have to worry about them, right? It's a big business. But the, mom and pop hotel, like the bed and breakfast in Bali, a lot of this type of hotels, small hotels, 5 bedrooms, 10 bedrooms, government must intervene. For example, they are free from tax this year, for example, fiscal intervention or even cash transfer, whatever. Or if, let's say, hair salon, you have to close down, then the government has to intervene. For example, they don't have to pay their rent for the year, things like that. And the owner of the building can get tax relief because the owner of the building doesn't receive the payment from the tenants, things like that. So government intervention is very important. And number three, I think the one area that is at one hand that can keep going on without too much worry about the pandemic, and at the same time is very needed, is food production, food processing, food distribution. not necessarily restaurant, but farming becomes a very good fallback position for so many people. Like in Bali now, all these tour guides, drivers, hotel employees, all these people, they are back to the village and farming. Uh, and you at least you get something to eat. So I think uh, rethinking or reimagining about food production is very important today. So that first we have enough food to eat, but then at the same time you can have enough opportunities for employment for the common people. So I think that's what I can say about this. I think that's Hanifa. I think we have already. I have one very interesting case in Korea for Hanifa about the vulnerables, right? That is the aging society, the old people, because Korea is already an aging society. There are more old people than young people, right? So you have so many old people in the nursing homes, and nursing homes are one of the worst clusters. So many cases of COVID transmission takes place in nursing homes in Korea. And you know, this virus is very bad for old people, right? So uh, the, since the beginning, special attention has been given to this particular people. So a lot of policies and efforts from the current government to really make sure that the nursing homes are safe. I think that's from me, Paripurna. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Your Excellency. Would you mind, Professor Lowry, answer the questions from Katrina and Hanifa? Time is yours.
Great, thank you, Professor Paripurna. I'll start with Mr. Haris. Okay. COVID graduate. Wow, interesting. It's a it's an interesting way of putting it. If you ask how an industry would, the industrial perspective on this, I personally, I would value COVID graduate very highly. Okay, that's what I would do. The reason why, as pointed out by High Excellency, that learning is a lifelong process. It never ends. Even until now, I already had my third degree almost 10 years ago, but I still, there's so many things that I don't know. Okay. And it go on as in life. And I think if we talk about skills, the one main skill that we all need is actually the ability to learn. In any cases, you will never learn enough. There is no enough in learning. Okay. The university will only provide you with the best safe simulation of life to give you enough sort of how we call it, ammunitions to go in real life. Because on campus, if you don't prepare well, okay, instead of an A, you get a B, C, or D, or you fail. It's fine. But in life, there's so many things at risk if you don't do things well. So I would bear in mind that being at university is the last opportunity that you have for this life simulation. Okay. After that, everything is gonna get serious and you have more at risk. I hope that will answer the question. So again, I would value COVID graduates very highly because you have been proven to be resilient and has lots of grit. Okay. Because again, I always mention this to my students, learning, it's not sort of you should be uncomfortable in learning. Why? Because you're doing something that you don't know. You are out of your comfort zone when you're learning, when you're studying. So it's never meant to be fun. I hope it will be fun, but you can try our best to be fun. But learning is when you do something new, something that you don't know. So it's always a challenge. And if you got through it, you'll become a new and better person. So again, COVID graduate, I think it's much, much better than other graduate. Okay.
Very
So
good.
that
Thank
will
you,
be
Dr.
from,
Wanda.
yes. So the next question from Miss Katrina. So printed modules, I think that's very positive that your government is actually providing a kind of solution to the less fortunate or the less privileged ones in the country. I'm aware that Indonesian government, for example, it's providing internet quota or access to internet for those who are unprivileged, okay? But if you ask me what would be the better solutions, some part of it, I think, again, from colleagues and friends in Indonesia, it's also done by the Indonesian government. This is why asynchronous learning is important. Let me tell you this, because printed modules, you will distribute printed modules to the houses, to students, right? But if you have pre-recorded lectures, these days, everyone has more or less smartphones, okay? These smartphones can be used for many things, as well as the source of information. Lectures are no longer the sole source of information. We can get information from anywhere. Also, that's why internet is important. But again, for those who don't have internet connection or quota, then with pre-recorded lectures, for example, all this material can be distributed by a memory card, for example, can be passed to one student to another. So if a lecturer can do online lecture, just with a simple of a click of a button, they can record their lectures, right? If they can record their lectures, it can be made accessible to those unfortunate and those unprivileged ones. So to me, that's a better solution compared to, for example, giving internet quota to millions of students, if you ask me. Again, so that would I think there are, and again, if you we discuss this lecturers, teachers in the field who's actually facing this type of challenges, I believe we would find even better solutions for this. And this is the importance of communicating with each other. I'm sure Professor Paripurna and High Excellency, we are all aware of the importance of this communication, okay? So that we all, again, we act as a community. It's not just by individuals, we act as a community, we improve and increase our resilience to sort of cope with this pandemic. Yes, I think the last for Miss Hanifa, I think all your questions have been addressed. So that will be it from me, Professor Paripurna. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess time is up. So for those that that question has not been answered, don't be worried that we would like to send your question into those two distinguished speakers, and then hopefully we can get the answer and send it to you by WhatsApp. And we are so sorry that the time is so limited. And then if I may conclude of this very interesting discussion, well, I guess the key words here is the community resilience. How do we create the community resilience from those two important things that we can do? The first is the preparedness, and secondly is the policy coherence, and the third is public trust. So imagine that we have a country, the people in the country need to understand each other. So create understanding among the people within the country, but not only the country, even the world, because the pandemic come from one country and spread over to the world. Even in the area when there is no electricity, still people can just get the virus there. So understanding each other is very important. We have to prevent people to make their carelessness affect other people. So this is the key, I guess, if we can develop a value of empathy, don't make our fault affect other people. We might feel good, but the virus is on us, you know. And then when we get along with old people or with people with got diabetic already, then it is possible that they will kill. So it's very dangerous, you know. And when we understand this, when we trust people that no people will make other people affected, then this is one key of our success, creating the community resilience. So thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. And let's give applause to these two distinguished speakers. Thank you so much, and let me give my time to the MC. Mas Adi, time is yours.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Paripurna, as a moderator for this discussion, and also thank you for His Excellency, Mr. Umar, as an ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia in Seoul, Republic of Korea, and also thank you for Dr. Irwanda Lauri, as an associate professor, School of Engineering, University of Warwick. Thank you very much. And this is the end of our meeting today, but before we close this agenda, we can have a photo session together, right? So everyone, for those who haven't turned on the video, please turn it on first. And the photo session will be taken twice, yeah? So once again, for all participants who haven't turned on the video, please turn it on first, and the photo session will be taken twice, yeah? So the operator is ready for take a picture for us. Okay, for the first session. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And for the second session, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants. And we remind you to all of participants for the day 2 quiz will be posted on Google Classroom. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the DREaM virtual program for today. We would like to thanks to all of the speakers, for moderator, and also the enthusiasm of all participants. Thank you very much. Don't forget to obey the health protocols to stop the spread of COVID-19. Yeah, wash your hand often, put on your masks, and physical distancing. Stay healthy. My God, take care of our health. See you on the next occasion. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you. Bye, everyone. All the best.
Thank you.